it's
Oh
like a
yeah,
part of.
I know exactly which target you're talking about too.
Yeah, so like I don't know, that's the best.
The,
So hey everyone, welcome to the Just Pick Something podcast, where we discuss a movie or TV show after scrolling through Netflix, looking at new releases in movie theaters, flipping between streaming services, or just grabbing a DVD from the bookcase. I'm Jakes, and I'm here with Mr. Franco, and on this episode we're going to talk about Encanto, released in 2021, directed by Jared Bush, Brian Howard, Charisse Castro-Smith, and at the time of this episode, you can stream Encanto on Disney+. So, to start talking about Encanto, right?
yeah, the movie.
Yeah, the movie, the reason we're here to talk about it.
Yeah.
Did you end up watching this like recently, or have you only seen it that one time when it came out?
Oh, I watched it when it came out, the day it came out on Disney Plus, because my family wanted to watch it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I watched it again. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday or the day before. Definitely this week. I've watched it at least like a total of 3 times. Yeah, that's fair. But
Okay,
so
cool. I've seen it twice. I've seen it once and
okay.
over the weekend when it hit Disney Plus,
Yeah,
right? Like you recommended it to me and let me know it was hitting the streaming service that
yeah.
weekend, right? Family was coming over for Christmas. Maya's family was coming over for Christmas. I was like, bet this is like a great family movie to watch while we're all just hanging out after opening presents, you know?
Yeah.
So my mom was over and everybody was cool with me putting it in Spanish.
Okay.
We watched the first time in Spanish and I loved it. I thought it was great. And I saw it recently just because I felt like watching it again and also just refresh my mind a little bit for this recording, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
English.
Okay.
It was a pretty good movie also in English, just a little different. And it was like, wow, this is kind of fun to notice some of the differences. Like there weren't a lot, but there were some subtle differences between the two languages, which was kind of fun.
That's funny because my whole thing was my wife had asked me if it was just going to be me and you. She was like, "Is it only going to be the two Hispanic people talking about this movie?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it is." And but when she asked me that, I was like, "Dang it! I should have watched it in Spanish too, just so I can understand." Like I was like, just because I want to know the differences. Because when Coco came out, which is the one that everybody obviously compares us to for no
Hmm.
good reason, in my opinion.
Oh,
Um,
it's funny you say that, dude. My mom also compared it to Coco, right? And I was like, I mean, they're pretty different, but she wanted to talk about like why they were different, which was a fun conversation we had around Christmas.
Yeah, fair. So when that movie hit, when I bought it, I watched it in Spanish and in English a bunch of times. Just
Coco?
because, yeah, Coco.
Hmm.
Just because I was like, oh man, I wonder how I feel about this movie in Spanish. And I love it in both, and it's just very interesting to watch how the language affects the songs, especially.
Oh yeah, for sure. It definitely affected Encanto similarly, where they weren't like the things that I noticed in Encanto specifically, because I haven't seen Coco in Spanish,
Okay.
was that like they had to change some of the lyrics, right, to
Yeah.
match a better flow in Spanish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was pretty clear. But I also think the performances in terms of singing were a little different in Spanish. They weren't worse or better, they were just different. And I really liked both. So now I have like one song that I like more in English and one song that I like more in Spanish and so on, you know?
Yeah. Now you're getting me. I'm like, man, now you just got to go watch it a fourth time in Spanish. Um, which which is very clearly praise to this movie that I want to watch it a fourth time.
I don't blame you. I didn't think I was gonna like enjoy it a crazy lot the second time around, but I like this movie more the second time around because I've noticed more things about it that it didn't pick up on it the first time because I was just kind of enjoying the ride.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. It's crazy because okay, so I watched it in theaters. Obviously, I loved it when it came out. Well, I liked it a lot when it came out. Let me be clear about that.
Hmm.
My opinion has obviously changed. My it hasn't changed. It's just been strengthened with subsequent viewings.
Hmm.
And that's the fact that like oh so originally when I watched the movie I liked it. I thought everything was good. I was like, this is a really good movie. It might be one of my favorite most recent Disney movies. It might arguably be one of my favorite Disney movies in a long time, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm pretty sure about that. And but I had like a common complaint I kind of heard was that the music didn't hit as well as people would have hoped it to hit, right? Like, it doesn't have, like, these really
Ooh,
strong.
I don't know. I don't know about that, man. I feel like I disagree. Like, I don't know what the barometer for that kind of statement from some of those people were. Like, are we comparing it to like you mentioned Coco or like a Frozen? Because I thought the music was pretty strong.
So I think people are comparing it to Coco because obviously they don't know how to not compare it to the other Hispanic movie that they know,
Yeah,
which I
the
I
two the
have
two
so many
Hispanic
problems with.
movies,
Huh?
the two Hispanic movies. Of course, they're going to be compared, right?
Yeah, I was like, "Man," I was complaining to my friends. I was like, "Man, you guys need to come up with better comparisons because I'm getting real tired of it being like, okay, but was it as good as Coco?" And I'm like,
See, they
"Man."
they forget about the Book of Life from, DreamWorks that came out, like, a year before Coco.
Yeah, and I'm like, but also I'm like, but don't compare it to that either. I'm like, you could compare it to literally, you could like, why don't you compare it to Moana? Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote the songs for both.
Dude, he's in, like and if it's semi-Hispanic related or, like, Latin American related, he's gonna be probably around. That dude has
Oh,
made a, like, huge just carving for himself in, like, media for Hispanic representation or Latin American
yeah,
representation.
and so I'm like hearing people like I don't agree. I didn't agree with people who were saying that the songs weren't like spectacular, but I was kind of like, yeah, but like none of them really stand out like that. I'm like none of them because I was talking to people about the Coco comparison. I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
none of them are like "Remember Me," which is the main Coco song.
Yeah.
And then I went home, I listened to the soundtrack, and I'm sitting here, I'm listening to the soundtrack. I'm like, wait, I think I like this whole soundtrack better than I like all the songs in Coco. But I will say that none of them are stick out as much as Remember Me. And I think that's only on the fact that Remember Me was like drilled into your head during the movie of Coco.
Well, I feel like part of the reason it was so impactful and like just memorable is just it served as both, the climax of that movie, right? And also the finishing punch of the soundtrack almost, right? Like
Yeah.
it all kind of like crescendo to that point in the story. So like it's just so like iconic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I feel like with that movie, and I say it was dug into your like to your mind. It's because that's like the first song you hear in that movie. Is he's like, oh yeah, I love Ernesto de la Cruz. I love him. He's best, and everybody knows him because of his song "Remember Me." And then like you're reminded of that song a bunch of times in the movie, and it plays such a pivotal point in the climax of the film, like you say, that I'm like, yeah, no, like of course you're gonna remember this song.
I mean, it's also really central to the theme of the movie, right? Which makes it
Yeah,
like a perfect way to like just finish your movie.
yeah, 100%. And so I'm like, I was like, so "Remember Me" is a great song. I think Coco's it definitely deserves all the praise, and Coco gets a lot. I think a lot of Coco's praise come from how powerful and poignant that song is. But I'm sitting back and I'm listening to the Encanto soundtrack, and I'm like, none of the songs hit that way. But I don't think this movie's music is designed to do that.
I think the music in this movie served a different purpose, which
Yeah,
it tied a lot of the themes together. And with Coco, even though we both were like not fair to compare the two of these movies together, right? They do serve as a good talking points because these movies are like fundamentally different with different themes and like different like cultures a bit. Just a lot of differences you can keep talking about. So it's great for conversation.
yeah.
Yeah, the music in this completely different like approach.
Stylistically
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, an approach and what it means for the story and like entirely, yeah.
And in terms of like memorable moments of in terms of music, right? The endings, that last song, I teared up a bit. My mom teared up a bit. Like it did the job, especially when the sequence of them fleeing the violence or la violencia that
Oh,
like
man.
I had to look up because I was like, this feels very specific to a culture or an event that I'm not super aware about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked it up and I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And then like, it hits so close to home with my mom and I, and it's like it was great. besides that last song, I mean, some of the music that I really liked is like I love Luisa's song about like strength, you know?
Oh yeah, surface pressure.
Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite music tracks in this movie. I like that the movie started and ended with the same song. You know what I mean? Like about the family. I think that was a really nice
Yeah.
touch. Like so, yeah. I think the music was great and like it served the story pretty well.
Yeah, so speaking like so with the songs, right? I thought it was first off, I'll go back to the Dos Orejitas song, which is the one that gets played during the really climactic flashback
Hmm.
at the end. And I was sitting in theaters and the song starts playing and the scene happens. And that scene killed me. I was like, oh man, I was crushed. I cried. I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't shed a tear. I think I cried like 3 times watching this movie.
For sure. At the moment they start crossing that river, and you know what's gonna happen, and it's just, oh god, the waterworks just flew out. You know?
So yeah, so I'm watching it in theaters and at home, this isn't really a thing because when we watch movies at home, we automatically have subtitles. But in theaters, I'm sitting there and I'm hearing the music and you watch it in English after you watch it in Spanish, so it's not really a weird thing because I'm sure the Spanish dub doesn't do this. But in the English dub, they play that song in Spanish.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I realized that.
So I'm sitting here and I'm sitting in the theater and I'm listening and I'm watching the scene go on and the music playing and I'm like, oh my god, they're not even translating this. They're not having subtitles. They're not having it in English. They're letting this like just purely musical and like moment happen. And I'm like,
Yeah, dude.
this is crazy. And I'm also bawling my eyes out. I'm like, God, I hate this movie so much.
Dude, I
And
know. God, like, and I really like that the movie just took that chance and let the emotion of the movie carry that scene without translating or anything, you know? Because I didn't realize this till like I watched them in the two languages, right? But
yeah.
the subtitles are the subtitles for the English track, not the Spanish track.
Mhm.
So they're the part of the thing that makes it kind of fun, and there's not a lot of them, but like there's a few things that don't translate because they're translating the English track and not the Spanish one. The one that
Yeah.
kind of stuck, like there's two small moments that like I laughed a lot harder than Maya did when we were
Okay.
watching it, even though she picked up the second one. The first one was it was around the time where they were starting the performance, the room ceremony.
Yeah, 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 the whole entire, the big ceremony thing.
Yeah, yeah. So the ceremony, when they were just about to start the ceremony, everybody was going in places, and there was that little kid whose ability was to like shapeshift into different people, right?
Yeah, Camilo, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he was like mocking his dad, right? And like he says one last snarky thing right as he's like being taken away. In English, in the subs, they're like, "Okay, I'm done." But in Spanish, he's like, "Okay, ya me callo."
Oh my god, that's so different.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
right.
Oh, like, yeah, 'cause it's oh, man, I can't wait to watch in Spanish now. Because you're talking
Yeah,
about, like, the implication of that statement
right,
is
right.
entirely different.
Right. So that made me laugh. And then the second one was just a little thing where they couldn't swear, but they really wanted to swear. So he said miércoles instead of like mierda, you know?
Oh, man.
Which was really funny because like we got it. Man, if you don't know the curse words in Spanish, it was just like, oh, that was such a clever wordplay to like get around that issue.
Oh, man, yeah, no, I can't yeah, this is making me again, I'm gonna watch this in Spanish now. Um
I mean, hey, you might be able to pick up more things than I did what is it, the fourth time around?
Yeah, right? Oh, yeah, it'll be the 4th time, yeah.
We'll be waiting at your door. Okay, okay, vamos, vamos, vamos. Okay, okay, vamos, vamos, vamos. All right, I'm done. Te esperamos en tu puerta. Okay, okay, vamos, vamos, vamos. Okay, okay, vamos, vamos, vamos. Ya, me callo.
But, like, okay, so yeah, I appreciate I really there's so much in this movie that I like. The thing is that there's just a completeness to this movie, right, that
Mhm.
I love in the sense that, like, from beginning to end, there in regards to the movie and the writing of the story in general, where it's like, "Oh, man, you guys really were thinking of how everything ties in with each other. When
Mm,
I understand there's some like I've heard some complaints about like, oh, I wish they would have spent more time with this character or done more here. And I was like, I get that, but the way they did it in the way they held this movie together was so succinct that I was like, I get why you would want more time with like Camilo or Dolores or
Mhm,
you know the mom or whatever or any of the
mhm.
other characters. I
Yeah.
get that, but at
Mhm,
the end of the day, I'm like, no, but they do. It's such a tidy job that they do. It's like everything gets called back to for the most part. The music they do that with the music really well. Where the opening track right is the Familia Madrigal, I think is the name of the song,
yeah, I think
right?
so.
And they call back to the lyrics of that song in the final song, right?
That one,
Which
the Bruno song, there's nice callbacks in the end.
yeah, there's nice callbacks to those. They don't they're I think musically they call back to Luisa's and Isabella's songs, but I
Yeah,
can't
they do.
remember off the top of my head where when it
No, no,
happened.
it's not as, like, as,
That's
big a callback as the Familia Madrigal, the first one, right? But they're in there
yeah,
because it fits the whole, like, we're singing about the family, so let's briefly
yeah.
talk about or sing Bruno's song, Luis's song, Isabella's song, all of them, you know?
And then there's like lines that I didn't even pay attention that they re-said like when the movie is like when when they're ending and they're doing the doorknob thing at the end. Um, the abuelita says, "Open your eyes, abre tus ojos," and I
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, yeah, cool, whatever." And then I forgot that that's like the first thing she says in the movie.
Oh, man, I
I
didn't even
was
pick that up. Nice.
I literally watched like when I watched it the second time, I was like, "Wait, she says that at the beginning." And it's like it was tiny details that I'm like, "Oh man, that's so
Just
crazy."
that gif of your mind being blown and it just repeats and you're, like, in space.
Yeah, I'm like, I was like, I can't believe that they're doing like these tiny. It's just tiny details, man. It's not even like anything like insanely big, but it's just like it's just a respect to the craft where it's
Mhm.
like, no, like you have to understand that this is a complete thing. Like we are not trying to like leave loose ends or like do any of this other stuff. It's like, no, this works as its own complete narrative where there's a very
Beginning, middle, and end.
clear writing style, and I really appreciate it, man. I was like, man, this is it was so crazy because the last time we talked about a movie, I had so many problems with like the writing inconsistencies and like ability, like there's such a sloppiness in my opinion that coming into this movie, I was just like, oh man, I love this movie, how concise it is, how well put together. I'm like, I have no complaint with this film in the slightest. Wait, do I? Yes, that the animation style of Disney is real samey.
Well, we can get to the complaint or, like, some things you wanted a little different in a second, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I love this movie, man. You
yeah.
go.
Alright, so just to briefly talk about how you were mentioning that some people had an issue with the lack of exploration with, the other family members, right? Like, we didn't get to spend that much time with, a few of them like we might have liked. We didn't get a chance to see inside of Luisa's room, which would have been cool, or, spend some time with some of the kids, maybe checked out the abuelita's room or got a little bit of insight into the parents of the main character. But at the same time, I think you could say that might have been intentional because I feel like one of the themes of this movie is kind of the importance of family, but how that kind of just like constricts you and like limits you and you just don't feel like individuals and you're kind of
Yeah,
just part of a collection, like a group instead of
yeah,
individuals, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Which is kind of cool because it made me realize that like the Encanto and everything was the house and this miracle, but it's really the family. Like the family was the Encanto, right?
yeah,
It was like a family all along, which was really nice. And there's just a lot of things in this movie. I feel like whoever was watching this, you could be from like all kinds of different creeds, and you could probably find someone in the family that you could relate to. You know what I mean? Because there's
yeah,
just so many personality traits, expectations put on every single member of the family in different ways that it's easy just to latch onto something and be like, God, that hits so close to home because I can relate despite them maybe not having as much screen time as you would hope, which maybe even makes you feel more relatable to that specific character.
yeah. No, I I find this movie incredibly personal to me at least because I relate and like empathize with a lot of these characters. So I just can't imagine. Like I was like, man, like I can't imagine anybody who watches this not coming out thinking, oh, I love this character for X, Y, Z reason.
Oh, yeah. Like,
Going back to the song that that gets the flashback song. I know this movie is in Colombia, but like I'm half a Salvadorian, right?
Okay.
It was crazy because when that scene hit, the first thing that came to my mind was my grandfather had actually left El Salvador because of the civil war that had happened.
Oh, really?
And that scene had hit, like, the grandparents leaving their home to like try to give their kids a better life. I'm like, oh my God, like, there's obviously like a general vibe that a lot of second generation kids probably get from like, oh, my parents left our home country
Hmm.
to seek a better life kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just to see is like I was like that specifically because of the violence.
Hmm.
I was like, oh man, like that, like I was like, no, yeah, like my grandpa leaving because of Civil War and all that stuff. I was like, man, that's super. So like, I don't know what people are gonna attach to, but I feel like I was like, shoot, it hit me there, and I was like, dang, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I get you. So for me, there's different things of every character that I can, relate to because we've had time on this planet to go through it, right? But the thing that hit me in terms of their origin story, right, was I didn't flee my country due to violence or something, right? I immigrated over here. It was this huge life changing or experience, and like it was weird seeing that and being like, wow, that kind of hits really personally,
Mm,
even though I don't remember everything in vivid detail. But also being a first generation, I kind of related to all the expectations that the children had to deal with, right? Like living up to, hey, your parents made it and they gave
yeah.
so much to give you opportunity, and here you are. So I really hope you make the best of it. And you're just like, ooh, okay, yeah, gonna do my best.
Oh man, that's just giving me like another like where someone could look at it from. It's like basically that, right? Where it's like if you look at it from
Mm-hmm.
the grandma leaving her home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Effectively gave her family this gift, and then like Mirabel's not using that gift or not having a gift, right? It's kind of like if immigrant parent being like, I like, yeah, like you said, I did so much for you to have this opportunity for you not to like do anything with it.
Yeah, you understand it because it's so much they do for you, and then at the same time, they have no idea what the future is going to be like in this country. So you just can't be prepared for everything, let alone everything the kid will experience outside of your like struggles on your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so like, oh man, that's oh god, I was not even thinking about it on that level. God,
Oh, do you? So this might be this might be a really good chance to talk about like the actual characters and stuff.
yeah,
Man, that abuelita, talk about like a matriarchy of the family, right? Like
mhm.
she was trying to keep everything on like a tight ship.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah, it's just going again. It's one of those things where I'm 100% like I'm just like relating it to my own family, where it's like I see that in my mom and I see
Hmm.
that in my grandma, who they're very just for the most part. My mom was a single mom, so I had to deal with a lot of just that like you know, I understand where she's coming from, what happened to her and all that stuff and how difficult it is to raise kids in that situation. And then the same thing with my grandmother. She
Hmm.
wasn't a single mom, but again, she left her home country and, started a new life over here and was very young. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can just imagine how like it was insane for me to watch and just try to like and like see that like character who is very
Hmm.
familiar to me in a different way, obviously, because they're obviously not one to one.
Hmm.
And it was even crazy because I watched it with my mom, and my mom's response to the movie was like, "That's cute, I
Hmm.
guess." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, mom!"
Yeah, dude, I don't know what it is about moms, but like even my mom, after the movie was done, she was like, it was pretty nice. It was a nice fantasy movie. I really liked that last song. I think Coco was a little better. I think this one was a little too fantasy for me. And I'm like, really? Really? You didn't just go through a whole experience? Because like I thought this movie was great. She's like, no, yeah, it was pretty good, you
I was
know?
like, where did we not? Where are we not connecting here? Like, do we not see the same parallels in this movie?
God, it's so funny, man. What is it about like Hispanic moms that just feels like that's not the first time someone's had that conversation with them?
Oh man, no, I know. Like look, okay. So I'm like, it was real bad. There, the scene where the daughter like stands up to the grandma. I was like, man, she about to get hit. But at the same time, I was like, man, I had a similar conversation with my mom, and that conversation did not end well.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah, dude. Me too. What is it? My wife says it's like the way I grew up learning to argue is very confrontational versus like non-confrontational. And like seeing that, I'm just, oh God, and like I feel I know what's gonna happen, and it's not gonna end up well. Someone's gonna cry. It's gonna get too crazy.
Oh man, that's 100%. I was like, oh god. But I think like for me, like
Mhm.
as the way we're talking, for me, I was like, man, this was super like not 100% like a one-to-one thing, but she like encapsulates a lot of the vibes I get from just being, a Hispanic kid with those kinds of expectations put on you. I mean, that's obviously like what the movie's about, but it just felt like it was a very honest portrayal of a lot of the feelings I have had. So which was insane to watch. I was like, "Oh my god, like I
Mhm.
can't even." I was like, "How did you like who did you talk to that I know?"
Yeah, honestly, I feel I relate more to the family dynamics of this movie compared to like Coco, which felt like a very like idealized
Yeah.
Hispanic family almost, you know? Sure, the like it wasn't all perfect, but this movie it felt more close to home where it feels like yeah, everyone loves each other and yeah, they're family and they get along great, but there's a lot of tension just under the surface that like you guys probably won't see if this wasn't like a movie about, you know,
It
family
was
and
it's
stuff.
so yeah, going back to that, yeah, when you talk about that comparison when regarding the family, that was I was telling my friend, they're like, "Oh, how is it?" Like, I was like, "How's it compared to Coco?" I was like, "Look, Coco, in my opinion, after watching this movie, having loved Coco since it came out, and I still love that movie. I still it still, kills me when I watch it. Uh,
Me too, yeah.
but having watched that movie and loved it for as many years as I have, watching this one, I was like, I never realized how it's a little harsh how I say it, but impersonal. Like it's not like is that the correct word?
I mean, I can see that word fitting. I think I know what you're trying to go to
Like
about it.
it feels way more generalized in terms of how everything is handled, as opposed to this one, which feels very personal and very character driven, as opposed to Coco, which I think is like, all right, you get the idea here, right? Like we're not gonna focus on that too much, or we're not gonna focus on the implications of this family dynamic too
Yeah,
much.
yeah, and
Like, because if we talk about Coco's story, we're talking about this wife scorned her husband because she thought he abandoned her, and then the implications that had on the family and how they raised their children is very like there's a level of trauma there, and
right.
to say that that's explored in any real way in that film would be a lie. I don't think it is. Like, I think you kind of get it a little bit with Miguel at the end, but throughout, I mean, like, cause he's like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, I have to like, he's bucking. It's more of like bucking trends. Is more what he's doing as opposed to being like,
Mhm.
I'm addressing a familial trauma with our family. And in this,
Yeah, well, you know, Coco, right? It feels more like the movie was about, you know, shining a light on a cultural aspect of region of the world that most people don't know about or have a commercialized idea in terms of like
yeah,
the United States, you know what I mean? And kind of like using that as a vehicle to tell a story through like a family, right?
yeah,
Where in this movie, the whole thing was about like a family and their, you know, generational like suppression of trauma and expectation. Just two different stories and like two different things they want to just express and show. You know?
yeah, very different. And that's again, I'm not saying this to like dunk on Coco or anything. Again, I owned the movie, I owned the soundtrack. I love that movie. I'll put it on any day. It's mostly just like it's by being able to discuss these two films that are very personal to me, that I'm able to be like, okay, yeah, like these are why I
Well, they just lend themselves so well to like comparison and discussion, especially between
yeah,
two people that have such like very strong ties to those cultures, you know,
Yeah.
and like it's easy to compare and talk about, right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I kind of get upset when people compare them, obviously, because it's like, find a different movie to talk about. Like, don't just bring up the other Hispanic movies to talk about it. And it's because,
Yeah, yeah, but
so speaking about the movies, I was telling my friend, I wasn't hyping up this movie, but I was explaining my love for it, and effectively, so growing up, I watched, growing up in the late '90s, I grew up watching Disney movies, right?
okay. I was about to say, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna name something that I probably know? Like, did you grow up watching, or maybe just in the room when someone was watching like El Gordo y la Flaca?
Oh, of course, that too. But I was mostly talking about like in general, like I'm American. I grew up in America entirely.
Yeah, me too. Me
So
too.
you're talking about like
Telemundo, though, right?
I'm oh yeah, Sábado Gigante and stuff like that. Uh, oh god, that's like one of my main childhood memories. Talk about like you walk in and you just watch the adults watching that for like 4 hours straight, and you're like, what in the world are y'all watching? That's how I always felt anyway. I was like, man, that's weird. But regardless,
Luisa will never be strong enough. Isabela won't be perfect enough. Bruno left our family because you only saw the worst in him. Bruno didn't care about this family. He loves this family. I love this family. We all love family. You're the one that doesn't care. You're the one breaking our home. Don't you ever! The miracle is dying because of you.
I grew up watching, Disney a lot because, it was really popular, talking middle of Disney Renaissance, end of the Disney Renaissance pretty much.
Hmm.
So because I grew up during that time, the number one movie that has been attached to me as a kid is Mulan. I love Mulan since I was a kid.
Hmm.
Um, which is, you know, a lot about familial expectations, doing your own thing, whatever.
Oh yeah, good. There's a lot you could put against that movie, right? Just a
Yeah,
lot
there's
of.
a, there's a, there's a lot of stuff, and there might be some similarities here and there.
Mhm.
So I was telling my friend, I was like, look, my favorite Disney movie is Mulan, to the point that like whenever I list like my top 5 films of all time, it'll show up, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
But between like 3 and 5. And I was telling him, I was like, look, Encanto is in the conversation to be with Mulan. Like I was
Oh yeah, for sure. This movie's gonna hold up really well. I heard a little while ago, just from like, random articles that would pop up on my feed or whatever I was using, that it didn't do super well at the box office at first. But like this movie is gonna definitely like hold up over time as people talk about it with their families and share with it about their like kids and siblings and stuff. And like I can definitely see someone in like 10 years being like, man, this movie was so ahead of its time in so many
Yeah,
ways, you
I
know?
think it's very much on the cusp of like the conversations that we're starting to have in like for our generation, like and
Mhm.
the generation after us, having to deal with a lot of a lot of similar issues in regards to dealing with how our parents handled things and how we now have to handle things, which is
Yeah.
also crazy. I don't know, because you watched it at home, it's very different. I watched it in theater, so they play the short prior, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right, they do play shorts ahead of,
Did you happen to watch the short? Like, I know they don't play with it, but I don't know if you had like, oh, okay, I'll go out of my way and look at the short that came with it.
which one was it?
It's called is it Far from the Tree or something like that?
I saw that pop up, but,
Yeah, the little raccoons.
yeah, everybody I was with, like, my family and Maya's family, they just wanted to, like, guess watch the movie, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. So that's understandable. It's okay. So I'll be open and saying I cried like 3 times during this movie, but I'm sure in no way was that helped by the fact that the short was like a perfect primer for this film, right? In the sense
Okay.
that like I feel like the conversations that I'm having a lot of the conversations I've had about this film with people who didn't watch the short are very different from the ones that I had who had watched. And
Okay.
I would say like for the most part we've had a very similar conversation. But a lot of the people that I talk to don't really understand they're like, "Oh, I didn't really see it from, like, a generational trauma type of thing or, like, healing from, like, family like, suppressed family stuff," and I was like, "No, no, no," like, I was like, "I don't know where you didn't get that from," but and I was like, "Oh, no," like, if you watch the short, it is very evident.
Well, it's funny you say that because, like, I could definitely see someone not like making those connections, right? But like the moment that Luisa's song comes up and you hit with that song about expectations, but even before that, there's the visual clues they give you about Bruno, and then how they mention like you don't talk about Bruno, and the way he's kind of like depicted and around the family, right? You're led to believe that for a moment, even I thought he was going to be the main villain of the story in a way, right? Wasn't sure where the story was going at first, right? And then, they sing a whole number about like why you don't talk about Bruno, the black sheep of the family, and you just get this feeling at that point that not all is well with the family, and then all the things start kind of just like revealing themselves as she's trying to save the miracle, right? Like what is the name of her tia, which is like the woman who can control weather?
Peppa?
Yeah, okay. So I kind of noticed that like she has pretty bad bags under her eyes. So maybe she doesn't sleep as much as everyone else, and how she's always constantly trying to be like happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts,
Yeah.
which I can't imagine what that does to a person who has to constantly maintain a happy exterior at all times, right?
Yeah.
And even her other members of the family, aside from Louisa, who has to be strong and there, and like her other family member who can hear everything, like what does that mean for like everyone's paranoia? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like or the other family member who could like shapeshift into anybody. Like it feels like everyone's power is kind of like a monkey's paw kind of power, where they get something incredible, but there's severe cost or like curse to
Yeah, like,
it,
it's like,
right?
okay, like, I can't imagine what this does to your psyche when when someone expects you to be your power, and, like, what does that
Mm-hmm.
mean for someone who can never
Yeah.
whose power is to turn into other people?
Yeah, like, or what's going to happen, for example, to the youngest member of the family who just received his power, where he can communicate with animals, and they have to prep food for livestock and like butchery and other things. You know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
god.
Like, I'm just saying, like, what a traumatic thing that kid's probably going to deal with, as when he realizes that like all of his friends have a sentient voice that express fear of death and don't want to be
Oh lord.
slaughtered, even though people have to eat and so on and so
Yeah,
forth, right? And it just feels nice that like the powers also act in a way to kind of like emphasize that the idea of like generational trauma, where it's great that they are able to help, but it also comes at like a cost to the family well.
yeah. So, we don't talk about Bruno, which is the song that we're just referring to.
Hmm.
Oh man, first off, that song's a banger. I love that
It
song.
is. But man, do they paint him so sinisterly in that song.
Yeah, they definitely don't make him look good, but it's funny.
They even do the green, like the Disney so-called evil green effect, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they do. Which, yeah, now I think about it, yeah, they do like the eyes and like the glow. Yeah, that's pretty. Oh, okay, yeah, that was. But it's funny because in the song, these are like small details. And again, people have to go and rewatch and see things, which I definitely recommend. But in that song, first off, the only person who doesn't speak negatively about Bruno is Dolores, right? She
Mhm.
doesn't speak negatively about him at all. She just says like, "Oh, he had a heavy burden. Him seeing the future, everybody blamed him for stuff." And like, she's like, "Oh, I always what reminds him or reminds her of him, right?"
Right, of course.
But while she's singing her part, if you look in the background upstairs, you see Bruno's silhouette going through the hall.
No way, really?
And so
Oh god, that's such a good detail.
you'll see him walk through, and then while she's finishing her bit of the song, you'll see him dancing.
Oh shit, really? Wow, that's incredible.
Yep.
What a great background detail that I didn't even notice.
Yeah, so it was crazy because again, that's the only part of the song that's not speaking negatively of him. So it's literally it's like he shows up for that part. Like all the other parts are like, someone else's image of him, and in that part it's literally him in the background just being like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna groove."
Yeah, but dude, like I'm gonna just groove. Oh, that's great. But what's crazy is that like it kind of shows you how, or at least that one song kind of shows you how quickly a family's perception of somebody can turn so sour over the course of just like one generation or like a couple of years, right? Because
I
like
would say like what, like 10 years maybe?
at most, because like okay, so like he got a vision of the whole like cracks and everything, right? So like the main character would have had to have been a young kid when that happened.
Yeah, so you're talking about like she's like 5 to 10 or something, right?
Right. So like it wouldn't have been that long, but so it only took like I don't know, maybe 5 years for everyone to just collectively be like, "Oh yeah, that uncle of ours, not no good,"
I
just we're not gonna talk about our no good uncle.
Yeah.
And like it's so sad that that happened in that quick turnaround time.
Yeah, I have to assume that it's big. I want to say I can't. I'm sure there's like an actual like, oh, this character is this many years old, but I have to assume that he left when Mirabel's thing happened, right?
Right.
She was like
To protect her from the
her,
scorn.
yeah, and Antonio had enough time to be born and become the age that she was, right? So
Mhm.
probably like 10-ish years had passed, right?
Right.
Because then that would make sense. Mirabel would be about like 20, which is like perfectly okay age, and Antonio would be 10 because he'd be old enough to have his little ceremony thing. So I'm
Mhm.
assuming that's probably the age gap, 'cause that's what you're talking about, like, that seems pretty reasonable. Maybe, give or take, like 1 or 2 years, like, either it's, like, 8 or 9 when they do it, because they're not gonna
Mhm.
make Mirabel, like, super old, but they're not gonna make her, like, super young either.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, like, the
Well, I really like just the brief moments of, levity that would just be sprinkled throughout, like, seeing the dad kind of just go about his business trying to, like, contribute to the family,
yeah.
and, like and then, like, seeing him being stung by bees or just kind of relate to her and be like, "Hey, I know what it's like, being a member of the family who is kinda just there, without being able to contribute like your relatives, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He seems so there is a window in the future where she's probably going to, connect more with her father because they're gonna share in that, like, mutual normality that they share, you know?
It's interesting too, and I never really picked up on it, but the demeanor of her dad and Felix, her uncle Felix, which is the husband of Peppa,
Mhm.
their demeanor in comparison to the family is very different in how they
Oh, yeah.
approach a lot of the issues. Like Uncle Felix, like, so the dad's like very much like, no, you have to care for my daughter. Like you haven't cared for my daughter nearly as much as you should.
Mm.
Understanding of Mirabel's, you know, whole issue and stuff like that. And then Uncle
Right.
Felix being the one who is very much sees the brighter side of things in regards to like how Peppa's powers work. And
Oh, yeah, dude, I love that they made Uncle Felix a dark-skinned, Latino man.
oh, that was
That was
great.
a really fun touch that, like, I appreciated, you know?
Yeah.
It
No, it's crazy because the first thing it was funny because the first thing I noticed was, how white they made Peppa, which the very pale with red hair, and then how dark they made her husband, which was the dark. He's not just Afro Latino, but he's also a
Mhm,
dark skinned one, not just like a
mhm.
passing one or whatever. No, they made him. They're like, nah, he's dark. He has dark, big curly hair. We're not playing. I was like, nah. I was like, okay, yeah,
Dude,
you like,
I loved it. It was awesome. I thought it was great.
but it's also
The family's so varied in terms of skin tone and hair texture and hair color that like it's really nice to see because like my family is huge that I don't like talk to everybody, right? But
yeah,
I've seen pictures and like, I see people that I'm related to who are like super light skinned, who have like curly hair, or I'm like a darker shade of complexion compared to some of like my cousins and I have long black hair and some other people have like brownish hair, and it's just great to see, you know?
Yeah, no, and it's crazy because for me personally, I'm a white dude, okay? Like everybody, they're like, "Oh, this guy's Hispanic. All right, what's he look like?" And they look me up and like, "That's a white guy." And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, yes, I'm white.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I don't know if I could say you're like immediately striking me as a white guy. I feel like I knew you you were something, and I just it was like, well, eventually it'll come up, so I'm just not gonna worry about
I
it.
mean, that's fair, but like, if anybody was like, if anybody had to like guess, they'd be like, at worst, he's European or something. But
What? Let me guess. You've gotten Italian or something
gotten
before?
Italian, I've gotten Bosnian,
Oh, Bosnian. That's something I haven't heard of in a while.
yeah, I've gotten Bosnian, Italian, and German. What I usually get. Usually, never. No one ever goes like, "Oh, you know what? He might be Mexican." I'm like, "Okay, guys, come on." Or I'm Salvadorian. Now, I mean, obviously, no one's gonna guess I'm Salvadorian. Barely, barely anybody who's not from Latin America knows what El Salvador is. So it's crazy for me because I very much look white. If you ever meet my brother, he is definitely of a darker complexion than me. I wouldn't say he's like dark, dark, but he's very much like the classic, more like almond
I
almondish,
guess
like
it's
hazel color Hispanic, dark black
okay.
curly hair.
Yeah.
And then, but then my mom had two kids after us
Hmm.
who are both half black. So they're of a much darker complexion than me and my brother. And so there's a good variety of skin tone within my family alone, where it's like
Oh, that's dope.
we don't get to see like I'm sure my sister would because she's in college right now, she's learning a bunch of stuff. Talking about like small details again. Felix's skin color, which is dope. But it's funny, just in character design. I love the use of color throughout the family. But Beppa being this weather controlling character who's all bright and sunny,
Hmm.
her husband's hair is black with gray streaks and it's big and puffy like a thundercloud.
Oh yeah, it was a really nice visual design between those characters.
Right? And I'm like, this is so cool. There's other like small details. Oh, Mirabelle's like "I Want" song, right? So the "and I Want" song is obviously like their big like solo number that tells you everything what they want to do, whatever.
Hmm.
In it, she says,
Hmm.
I can't move mountains. I can't make new flowers grow. I want to heal what's broken, and I want to show this family something new." And though like so she literally when the house breaks, right, the mountains split open,
Hmm.
she helps Isabella learn how to grow new plants and stuff,
Hmm.
right,
Yeah.
and then she helps the family grow and shows them how to live their life, like shows them a new way of living their life from that day forward. And so I'm like, oh my god, this song is literally about like the story of this movie. I was like, they literally go through her "I Want" song and they like show her
Yeah.
like doing everything, right? But then on
Talk about like a well executed song and also story beat, right?
yeah, because on top of all of that, you would be like, all right, cool. It does like a little, it's like information on the story. And I'm like, yeah, 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 cool. But at the same time, the whole song is "I'm waiting for a miracle," and the second she's done with the song is when her journey begins. Because as soon as she's done singing the I want," "I'm waiting for a miracle," the house begins to break.
Yeah, which was great timing because at that point in the movie, it's like the best time to be like for an audience member to be like, "Oh, I this is like cool, but what's the like central like force
Yeah,
or
conflict
conflict,
and
you know?"
stuff. Yeah, and so it's like so we get this song that lays out a lot of the things of the film and this character who wants something, and the thing she wants is automatically the quest to get the thing that she wants is started as soon as that song is over, which I'm like, this is just great storytelling. I really appreciate everything this movie does.
Yeah, dude, I really liked it. I mean, we've sung the praises of this movie and stuff. It's just a solid movie that hits really well and has a lot of like things that I really appreciate that they did. Like, I really hope this movie just keeps picking up a quiet steam as it kind of just like reaches people over time. Like, I'm okay with it just being like a movie that persists and like continues to let people just enjoy all of the relatability and funness of this movie, you know?
Yeah, I'm really glad that it's a lot easier for people to it's a lot easier and safer for people to access this movie because I was really upset that it didn't do super well.
Well, I mean, COVID concerns and then like Disney Plus promise of streaming, and there's a lot of factors that didn't help, right?
Yeah, and so I'm like, man, this really sucks. And then as soon as it hit streaming, I was like, all right, guys, go, go, go watch this movie now. Like I can't, like I was not waiting another day to talk about it with people who didn't go out and watch it in theater,
Mm,
which is fair. I watch it, safely and away from a bunch
mhm.
of people. So I was happily okay with it, but I understand why other people didn't. I also understand that, harder to go out in the movies in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was but yeah, no, I'm glad. Man, I'm so this probably like I don't know how much of a debate it is for me personally, but it likely is my favorite movie of this year.
Ooh, that's hard, man. I feel like I've seen some pretty good movies this year, even if they didn't come out this year. And it's hard for me to say if this was like my favorite movie, but this was really good. This was a lot of fun to watch and like really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched.
I I wonder what they're gonna do with this, like, if there's a next, because like, I don't it feels like this is a great one-off, and it also feels like because it's Disney, right, there's always the chance that they might spin this off into
I
something.
hope they don't. I mean, like I'm okay with like shorts or something, but I don't want anything more from the like. I'm perfectly happy leaving this perfectly succinct film alone.
Yeah, that's fair. If they do, and the chances are always likely that I mean, I could kind of see this as a TV show, or even if they do a sequel, it'd be kind of cool if they expanded this a bit because this feel like it hints that this takes place during a certain time, right? With the flashbacks to the abuelita's like escape and some of the tech they use, like the camera, right? And the fact that like there's an absence of certain like tech and stuff, right? So if they did do a sequel or a TV show or something, it would be kind of cool for them to maybe, do a bit of a time skip kind of thing, or maybe have one of the characters maybe like leave, then the family would go to that person. Like maybe the main character from the first one becomes the abuelita in the next one, and then it's more about like I don't know, like her family has gotten so big that they've all left and flew the nest kind of thing, and it's just like this exploration of what it means, something like that. I don't know.
I'm interested in seeing it if they do something different, what they do because yeah, there is an implication of when it happened, but I'm wondering if the tech that they use is based off of when everybody left,
Hmm.
right? Because obviously the development of tech would have stopped for them for the most part, uh, based off of like obviously cameras wouldn't have increased in whatever, and it wouldn't have been invented further because they had left where those things were progressed further or whatever,
Hmm.
right? And it's interesting because the original conceit for this film, if you look at the art books and stuff, which I was like looking into behind the scenes stuff,
Oh, cool.
um, o- originally they had wanted it to be in like a 50s, 60s style, right? And you're talking about they would go around on like motorcycles and they would be like in like a sprawling like city with like all the colorful like apartments and buildings and stuff like that, and like more of like a
Ooh,
more
ooh, that's awesome. But man, rest in peace, background art animators and designers, and that's a lot of work. Like, which is probably why we didn't get a chance to see some of the other family members' rooms and things. Just like time and money and decisions had to be made. In terms of like what to show because animation is not cheap.
well, yeah, because they were talking about originally the story was going to be not too dissimilar from this, but it was going to span like multiple generations,
I mean, that's a cool movie or show.
right? And so they were like, oh, we're going to start all the way with like the abuela's grandpa or whatever, and we're going to go all the way to modern day type thing. And I was like, I don't know how the heck you guys planned on that working. which the answer is they clearly didn't think it would work because they scrapped
Yeah,
it.
well, I mean, they can't because that's more a TV show, right? Because for a movie, it has to be a tight production because you want to make money off of this project, right? Because it's just how it goes. But also that's a lot of people involved with planning and designing and character art and background art and voice acting and so on and so forth, right? It's a lot to ask a studio, even if it is Disney, which they should pick it up because that would be an awesome show or movie, but it's a hard sell,
Yeah,
you know?
I think so. If they did something that came after this, I feel like going for that like more modern aesthetic would be really fun. But have it be like they've been isolated for so long that obviously this is very jarring for them. But it would be an interesting way of doing something with like Camilo, who is like, oh, I'm always the one trying to be other people for other people. I never know who I am as a person. So it's a good way for his character to be like, ooh, I get to explore this brand new place and get an idea of who I am and what I want to do.
Yeah, that's why I think this movie could work well as a TV show.
I gave her a vision. Huh? It was me. I was like, go. And she was like, she only wanted to help. I don't care what you think of me. But if you're too stubborn to...
All right, so question. What is your favorite song from the film?
Oh man. So, I think it would probably be Luisa's song about her struggles and stuff.
Oh yeah, Surface Breath.
I think it's because I really like Don't Talk About Bruno, right? Let's not talk about Bruno. It's great, but it's also kind of sad and it's like, oh, that's a kind of a bummer, even though it's good. I like Isabella's song. I feel like that song is an interesting kind of duet.
Okay.
And in the beginning, first song, it's great, but I just like how Luisa had her own song on her own where she just got to like express herself, and hearing it in Spanish made me really appreciate it. Hearing it in English made me appreciate it. And I think for me it's just my personal favorite because it's just solid, especially the way it starts where it doesn't sound like
Yeah.
they're going for a song, more like, Lin-Manuel Miranda kind of like,
Sing rapping.
yeah, a bit, but then it kind of just transitions into that like song,
Oh, the musicality of that song is so great. It like, yeah, the different genres it like touches on and the shifts in tone and stuff are really, really good. I would love to get into that more, but
Plus, I mean, the donkeys are just a fun, silly treat.
that's great too.
But yeah, I think it's a great song musically. I think it's a great song visually, and it's probably my favorite song because it lets a character shine on their own without an accompaniment of the other characters somewhat.
Yeah, I think I would go with "We Don't Talk About Bruno." I agree with everything that you said, and I think that song is in contention with "We Don't Talk About Bruno" in regards to like the how much I enjoy it.
That's a good song too, though. It's hard to pick one, you know?
Yeah, I do love getting to hear more of the characters and them getting their own like specific style. Oh my god, like the beginning part with Peppa and Felix, their like little duet part and their like back and forth is really fun. But then
I mean, it really shows just how much they click, you know?
yeah, and so like all the way to the end where Lynn was able to bring all of these completely separate parts of the song into this big chorus of voices, and I was like, man, this works. Like I don't know how it does or why it does, and how I'm completely overwhelmed by like 15 different people singing 15 different things. But oh man, I love this. I think but in reality, I love the entire soundtrack. Again, Dos Orujitas is like oh, I'm gonna bawl my eyes out pretty much anytime I watch the scene. I'm pretty sure. But
The thing I liked about Don't Talk About Bruno is it's unintentionally such a subversive song. Not unintentionally, but it's intentionally because it's also just such a red herring for that point in the story where you feel like Bruno will probably be an antagonistic force in the story, and he doesn't turn out to be that at all.
yeah, and then seeing how those things are subverted later on in regards to the story that Peppa tells and the visual that Camilo like gives of him. It's like, oh yeah, he's 7 feet tall. Like, man, that dude's short. That dude's short. He's not mischievous in the slightest.
No, he's just a guy that's kind of superstitious, but because it fits his character for a person who can see into the future.
Yeah. Speaking, so last thing.
I mean, we have been talking for a bit, so yeah, I guess we could wrap it up.
In the book, Bruno is described as originally when he got his powers being like the star child of the family.
Really? The art book said this?
Yeah, the art book says that he was like the star child, where he was like, he would give people predictions and they'd love him because he was giving everybody news and they would love to hear his predictions. But as his vision started to become more negative and people started blaming him for things, that's when the family started treating him a certain way. And that's how he got to the situation, got to the reputation that he ended up with. And I was like, oh man, I was like, you guys left that out of the film, and I'm kind of upset about it now.
That's true. That would have been so good to see. And but if they included it, it would have made me want to see more of Bruno in the film. And I did want to see more of Bruno in the film. I understand if they had to cut that because that's just more money and budget and stuff put it into the story, right? That they could
You have
not.
to balance so much more into like, even if it's just like even more lines of dialogue, it probably like, oh, but if we leave that in, it makes certain characters look a lot worse.
Yeah.
And we don't want people to have a bad taste in their mouth in regarding to these people, or we want to like have this certain kind of impression on him, and it makes more sense to just have him always be the black sheep instead of having him be like an Isabella and then ending up like a Mirabel. And so it's like,
Yeah, but it would have been a good way to have incorporate that into the story. Would have been to have her mom seeing the story or seeing like a memory of Bruno from their childhood, because it would have been a nice like addition to see some insight into their childhood as well. You know?
I mean, the main conceit that I think we're getting at is we wish there was more to this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Okay, I think that's a pretty good point to call this one a recording session.
Yeah, I think that was about as long as the last time, too.
Yeah, roughly. Thanks for listening to us praise and discuss this movie for like an hour. We appreciate you, and we hope you check out Encanto. The intro and outro song is VHS Dreams by Sean Ivers. Link in the description. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time.